This video I'm going to go over a bunch of tips for learning slide guitar in 2026. Play slide every day. So that means not taking big, long stretches of time where you're not playing. So skipping, weeks to months on end. It's just going to it's going to make it so difficult to actually develop the skill. So playing every day is super important. And if you take it seriously, I promise that is really the most important thing. You will get better doing it that way. Another tip, record your playing as much as possible. So you don't have to go crazy and book a professional studio and an engineer. You literally only have to just set up the voice recorder app on your phone. Just, 30 seconds here and there. Just get a sense of your progress, where you're at, and then listen back, objectively assess, is this where I want to be? Do I feel like I'm getting better? Am I happy with how I sound? And really kind of nitpick and figure out, okay, where can I get better? And that's going to transform your playing. When I started doing this, I noticed huge improvements. And it doesn't have to be something as like part of your practice. If you want to be creative and, record yourself and try to, work on original music or recordings and things like that, that's another way to do this. So it doesn't have to be a, really set, dry, like practice type thing, but just make sure you incorporate in those recording sessions, some time to really nitpick and be, critical of your playing, and you'll get the same benefit out of it that way. And that's a way you can kill two birds with one stone with it. But recording is super important, and it will help you tremendously. Keep a practice journal. I have a dedicated video to this of how to do this and why it's useful if you want to check that out. But keeping a practice journal is, the quick elevator pitch is just, charting out each time you practice guitar, charting out the things that you work on at the time you do, just keeping like an accurate log of the things that you work on. You keep yourself honest and you actually know, okay, am I actually practicing the things I want to get better at? And if you, reach a point where you just don't feel like you're getting better or things are starting to regress or something like that, you just go to the log and see, okay, am I actually spending the time and working on the things I should be working on? And if you're not, then it's your own fault. You can't blame anybody but yourself. So it's a great way to do that. Why this is useful for slide especially is because if you keep a note, a lot of us don't play slide all the time. So we play guitar and slide kind of just supplements things. It's like an extra sort of skill. But it's not the only thing we do. So by making sure you make it a point to, keep a note of the time that you play slide every time when you're practicing, you can really get a gauge for how much time you're actually putting in. Because if you're like me, like I'll think I'm playing a lot, and then when I actually go and see what I'm doing, it's really not that much. And especially with slide, like I can get really lazy and not actually play as much as I think I'm playing, and it really only amounts to like a couple minutes here and there, like a week or something. So making sure that you're keeping a note of things like that will really keep you honest and help you to, be able to incorporate more time. Focus on the comfort of the slide versus the overall like sound that you're after. For a long time, I used like one of these heavier blues bottle slides. So they're like a thicker glass. They're heavier and they're kind of bulky. More bulky than anything. Like they're not super heavy. There's definitely heavier ones as far as slides go, but I noticed the sound of these is still my favorite, and I really was after that Derek Trucks styles sound, so that was like a real big part to his sound, and I still prefer that one. But I noticed, there was times where it just started to feel kind of uncomfortable, and I didn't want to play as much because it was kind of uncomfortable. So I switched slides, and I've made me want to play more just because it was just more comfortable for me. So I found something that worked better for me, even though it wasn't necessarily the one that worked the best for, the guy that I wanted to learn from or try to sound like initially. So don't let that. So sometimes this can be a real, it can add difficulty to your practice routine, which is not good because this is just as hard as it is already. You'll probably figure it out. Don't get me wrong. Like you can make it work, but if you're really noticing that it's like, it just feels uncomfortable and super bulky, like too much, like it's going to be uncomfortable either way, but wherever it's a point where it's really hindering your ability to play and it's almost making you not want to play, definitely consider trying another type of slide that might be a little bit smaller or a different shape or weight or something, and experiment and see, because everybody's different. So just because you want to really sound like somebody, it's not worth the extra headache of like, all the extra weight, and it might even start to cause you, like I started to get like soreness and stuff over time if I played too much with like a really uncomfortable bulky slide. So I had to kind of work around that and realize that there's other slides out there. I can figure this out. So definitely experiment. I think that's another tip that I think can be very helpful to people learning slide, and it can, potentially help you to get better just because you'll find something that works better for you. Watch a lot of videos of slide guitar players that you really like. I don't know if there's any science to this necessarily. I don't, have the research to back this up necessarily, but I find watching, especially now with all the amazing, high quality videos we have on YouTube of every musician you could ever imagine, just watching a lot of videos and kind of actively trying to pick out what they're doing. And it's even good to do it with a guitar and try to like follow along and just, noodle along and see if you can figure out what's going on. But watching somebody play is super helpful. This, you can even do this with a really good instructor as well, just kind of visually seeing what's going on. I did this a lot, just watching videos of Derek Trucks years ago and trying to just pick out what he's doing. And that's honestly how I tried to figure out a lot of that style. I've gravitated a little, away from that specific style, but it was super helpful to try to figure out his sound and what's going on. And then, trying to put my own spin on it now is like another challenge. But that was a real, kind of gateway into developing that skill. And so watching whatever, guitarist you really like, just finding some videos and trying to visually see what they're doing is, a great way to try to figure out the technique that way too. Another tip, try to incorporate some standard tuning slide guitar practice. I know this won't necessarily work for everybody, but I really feel like if you play slide kind of on a normal guitar, I really think, so not like a, lap steel or something like that, or square neck. I really think that incorporating some standard tuning slide guitar practice can really help you, because it's not as easy, honestly. And I know that's, making it harder on top of how hard it already is not the best thing. But if you trust me with this, standard tuning will really work that finger picking muting technique. And this is not like you have to, become only play in standard tuning. The open tunings are totally fine. You can get really good just playing in those, but by supplementing that with your supplementing the open tunings with a little bit in standard tuning will really help that muting technique. And on the flip side, I try to, I play mostly in standard tuning. I try to do a little bit in open tunings here and there just to, work my brain a little bit so it works the other way too. But this is just another way. So keeping it, keeping you on your toes and kind of changing things up can really help you. And it's a great way to challenge yourself in your practice routine. Set aside some time for real focused exercises and metronome practice. And I know this is probably the most boring thing you can do when it comes to learning guitar, but set aside some time for some real focused practice, whether it's exercises or playing to a metronome, things like that. And I know these can be really dry and kind of, barriers to you wanting to play more, but doing just a couple minutes a week or something like that, I find can be very helpful. I like to do it like just first thing when I'm going to practice guitar, just get it out of the way. It's as a warm up, and I find it's super helpful just to get everything ready to play, get your fingers warmed up, get used to playing in time. So doing this like a metronome can be very helpful. I promise you, doing this every now and then, I'm not saying you have to do this every single time you play, but every now and then is super, super helpful. I find I feel so much more comfortable playing, even if I do this for just a minute or two before I'm starting to play or a recording session or something. And I have a couple videos about this on my channel. If you want to check those out, I'll try to link that somewhere as examples. And I'm going to try to make some more videos about these in the future, so stay tuned for those. But any type of focus practice, especially to a metronome, is going to transform your playing. So this is kind of similar to another tip I talked about, but trying to play slide as much as possible. And I know easier said than done, but one way you can do this, if you're like me, you watch a lot of like videos or shows and movies and stuff. While you're doing that, if you have like a guitar, like an electric guitar that you can keep unplugged, and you can just kind of noodle while you're watching stuff, like you don't have to sit and really focus, or just sit there and noodle and just kind of play around with the slide and all the things that you've been learning and working on, and just kind of work on stuff while you're, entertained with other stuff. Like it's a kind of it's pretty crazy how much time you can add to your practice routine by just, doing this while you're, completely zoned out doing other stuff. Like there's a lot of dead time in our lives these days with all the screens and stuff that we, can watch all these things on. So while you're you might as well take advantage of that time, and, you don't have to do it while it's going on exactly. Like you can watch something for, however long you want, pause it for a couple minutes, and then just play for a minute or two, just noodle around, and then just go back to watching and just keep doing that every now and then. And you'll find like you'll add, I'm talking like if you sit there and just kind of noodle while you're watching stuff, you'll add like, no joke, like hours to your practice time. Even a day you can do this. If you're like me, I watch stuff like that for hours at a time. So like, you'll add crazy amounts of time to your playing. So I highly recommend doing that as a way to, kind of a little hack. Like I've talked about this in one of my, I think, practice hack videos. That's a great way you can add a lot of time to your practice routine. All right, thanks for watching. I hope that video was helpful. If you did enjoy, it'd be great if you could give a thumbs up on the video, and also consider subscribing to the channel for more slide-related content. Thank you.